Vanakkam. Hello friends. In this episode of Know Your Roots, where we are exploring the rise of the early Cheras, Cholas and Pandyas, we go back to the Chera dynasty. And though early Cheras might have been ruling from as early as the 6th century BCE onwards, going by the archaeological proof provided at Pattanam, which was the famed Chera port of Musiri, we go by the evidence found in Sangam literary works, wherein, in his The Chronology of the Early Tamils, K.N. Sivaraja Pillai lays down a ground rule that the first Chera king who occupied the prestigious capital of Karuvur should be taken as the founder of the early Chera dynasty. Accordingly, we saw how Karuvur area Volval Kopperuncheral Irumburai ascended to the seat of Karuvur between 25 BCE and the first year of the Common Era. Following him came two Chera rulers, Anduvancheral and Udiyancheral, who ruled between the first year of the Common Era and 25 CE. Third in line came three contemporary Chera kings, Kudakko Nedunjeraladan and Palyane Selkezhukuttuvan, who were the sons of Udiyancheral, and Selva Kadungo Ariyadan, who was the son of Anduvancheral. Their time period is given between 25 and 50 Common Era. In the fourth generation, ruling between 50 and 75 Common Era, we again have three Chera rulers, Kuttuvan Irumborai, who was the son of Selva Kadungon, Kalangai Kanni Narmudi Cheral, and Kadal Pirakottiya Velkezhukuttuvan, who were both the sons of Kudakko Nedunjeraladan. They all ruled over different territories. The Chera king Kuttuvan Irumborai was the famed conqueror of Tahador that earned him the epithet Tahador Erinda Peruncheral Irumborai, and two Sangam poets, Mosi Kiranar and Arisil Kirar, have sung his praise. Tahador is identified with Dharmaburi in today's Salem district by the Tamil scholar Avai Duraisamy Pillai in his Sera Mannar Varalaru, where he describes extensively the geography of the early Chera dynasty. Mosi Kiranar could have been the son of Mudamosiyar, points out K.N. Sivaraja Pillai, and in Purananuru poem 50, Mosi Kiranar describes the very famed anecdote, which was probably an actual incident. Under the Padan Tinai, the poem begins, Masu ara visitta varpuru valpin, mai padu marungal poliya mangay, and goes on to describe the decorated war drums, that is the por murasu of the king, that had been taken out in procession to be bathed in the blood of the fallen enemies in the victory parade. Manni vara alavai ennai nurai mugattanna menpoon cheke. The bed in which the war drums were kept had mattresses that were as soft as the oil foam, points out the poet, and seeing an empty bed, the tired poet lies down and goes to sleep. Soon the king returns with his war drum, and in those days the punishment for a person sitting on the Murasukattil was immediate death. But seeing that the person sleeping on the cot was a great Tamil poet, the king not only did not punish him, Adanodum Amayadu Anuga Vandu நின் மதனுடை முழவு தோல் ஓச்சி தன்னென வீசியோயே வியலிடம் கமழ இவனிசை உடையோர்க்கு அல்லது அவனது உயர்நிலை உலகத்து உரையுளின்மை விளங்கக் கேட்ட மாறுகொள் வலம்படு குறிசில் நீ ஈங்கு இது செயலே. O king, not only did you not punish me, but revealing your great affinity towards Tamil, you stood there fanning me with a fly whisk. They say those who earn fame in this mortal world would find a place in the immortal heavens. But by your benevolence, you have honored me despite my crime, thereby bestowing me with heaven on earth. The poems sung by Arisil Kirar in praise of this king have been compiled to form the 8th canto of the Paditruppathu. Of course, Arisil Kirar celebrates the great victory of Irumborai over Tagador and describes how Tahador lay in ruins after Irumborai's army ran over it. But what is intriguing is the way the poet's heart reaches out to the defeated ruler of Tahador, Adiyaman Yelini. This Adiyar Magan Yelini is identified by Adiyaman Neduman Anji by some scholars. We should remember that these Sangam poets were not merely poets but also advisors and guiding beacons to the rulers who patronized them. Thus, when Adiyaman Yelini foolishly antagonized the Chera king, misled by some of his fellow warriors into believing that he could actually conquer the Chera ruler, Arisilkirar sensed the great destruction that would befall the illustrious Adiyar clan. So, with the knowledge of his king Irumborai, he goes as a goodwill ambassador to Elini and tries to talk him out of the idea of waging war against Irumborai and tries in vain to persuade him to accept Irumborai's suzerainty. But the misguided Elini refuses and Tahador pays the price. Arisilkirar sings, Kandru Amarayam Kanathu Algavum starts the poem and goes, கலங்கா செங்கோல் வையகம் புகழ்ந்த வயங்கு விடை ஒள்வாள் பொய்யா எழினி பொருது களம் சேர. The poet describes him as Poya Elini, the honest Elini who never lied, the fame of whose sword spread all over the world, who protected his kingdom and ruled with a just scepter. He lay dead in battle. His people behave like motherless children, and his country cries in anguish. The poet concludes quite beautifully, being as he was very loyal to the Cheran Irumborai, he blames the god of death Kutruvan for the death of Elini and not the Chera king, and he sings, நீ இழந்தனையே அரணில் கூற்றம் வாழ்தலின் வருவும் வயல் வழன் அறியான் வீழ்கொடி உழவன் வித்துண்டா அங்கு ஒருவன் ஆருயிர் உண்ணாய் ஆயின் நேரார் பல்லுயிர் பருகி ஆர்ஹுவை மன்னோ அவன் அமரடு களத்தே. O Kutruva, you have acted in haste like the poor farmer who feeds on the seed grains, that is the vidai nel, thereby depriving himself of a bountiful harvest in the next season. By taking the life of Elini in haste, you have denied yourself the opportunity to take countless lives of the enemies of Elini, whom he would have slain in battle. Remember, we saw the astute observation of Avai Duraisamy Pillai in his book The Seramannar Varalaru of how there existed the custom of carving out and creating new provinces with their own capital cities to accommodate every Chera prince of a particular generation, who were then crowned as independent rulers. So thereby, the two sons of Nedunjeraladan, Kalangai Kanni, Narmudi Cheral and Kadal Pirakottiya Selkezhukutuvan, were ruling over different provinces. Kalangai Kanni Narmudi Cheral was ruling over the province of Kundranadu. We saw in the first part on early Cheras of how Palyanai Selkezhukutuvan became the ruler of Karur upon the demise of his elder brother Nedunjeraladan. Now, towards the end of his days, Palyanai Selkezhukutuvan led the life of an ascetic and spent all his time in rituals, thereby neglecting his kingdom, which became weak. Upon his death, Nannan, who was the ruler of the neighboring province of Anamalai, which at that point of time was known as Nannanur, saw an opportunity to usurp a few territories belonging to the Cheras. He gathered a few chieftains and marched through the Palghat forest and captured the Palghat Pass and the adjacent Chera territory of Purinadu. So when Kutuvan died and Narmudi Cheral was called to assume the seat of Karur, born to Nedunjeraladan and Paduman Devi, Narmudi Cheral was then the rightful heir to the seat of Karur. Narmudi Cheral had to march from Kundranadu through Purinadu to reach Kuttanadu, the capital of which was Karur. On his way, he came with a big retinue of an army and defeated Nannan and exiled him and marched victoriously into Kuttanadu and ascended the throne of Karur. With this victory, Purinadu, which extended up to the coast of Tulunadu in the north, became a part of the Chera domain, In celebration, the king was coronated with a crown made of dark-hued gems that looked like the kalarchikkai, that is the kalangai, and lustrous pearls which were strung on golden threads and stitched onto fiber cloth, and hence the literal meaning of the title that was bestowed upon him, Kalangai Kanni Narmudi Cheral. The poet Kapiyattu Kapiyanar sung the praise of this ruler, and these poems were compiled to form the fourth canto of the Paditruppathu. He praised Narmudi Cheral as Thulangakudi Tiruthiya Valampedu Vendri, meaning the ruler who was generous and protected the people of even the enemy rulers whom he had defeated in war. Now, Velkelu Kutuvan was ruling from the seat of Kudanadu, which was further north, and after the demise of his brother Narmudi Cheral, he ascended to the seat of Karur. He became the overlord of entire Chera country, and as he shifted his capital from up north to the south, the neighboring provinces of the Chera kingdom towards the north that were ruled by the powerful Kadamba tribes started becoming assertive and gave trouble in the border regions. Velkelukutuvan's father, Nedunjairaladan, had kept the Kadamba rulers in check, which had earned him the epithet Imayavaramban. Kutuvan immediately sent his armies northwards and put down the aggressions of the Kadambas. The Kadambas then sought the help of the Yavanas, writes Avai Duraisamy Pillai, for putting together a sea fleet to attack the Cheras from the seaward side. He conjectures that the Yavanas were both envious and vexed with the Cheras for having drained their country of precious gold through their sea trade. So the Yavanas saw this as an opportunity to weaken the Chera power by joining hands with the Kadambas. Velkelukutuvan, who also went by the name Sengutuvan, put together a large fleet of seagoing vessels, the first of its kind in the early history of Tamil Nadu, to defend the coast of Chera territory, and he also came up with a strategy wherein he thought the Kadambas could enter Chera country through the shores of the neighboring territory, which was then under the rule of a chieftain, Arugai, who owed his allegiance to the Pandyas. So he sent an emissary to Arugai, asking him to strengthen the position of his coastline to prevent the Kadambas from breaking into that side of the Arabian Sea, and Arugai obliged. The Chera king went to sea with his huge fleet and surrounded the entire Kadamba fleet and routed them and gained a massive victory. He captured the Kadamba ships with all the wealth that it carried and brought them back to the Chera country, and this victory earned him the epithet Kadal Pirakkotiya Sengutuvan. He generously gifted his soldiers and the bards with the spoils from the Kadamba war. Now, Paranar composed several poems praising the munificence and might of Sengutuvan, which were compiled to form the fifth canto of the Paditruppathu. An important observation is made by KNS regarding the Padigam, the summary that is added at the end of the fifth canto, obviously added by a later redactor, and which talks about few other victories of this Chera king, such as the victory at Idumbil and the conquest of Viyalur. Now, this redactor talks of how Sengutuvan went to the Himalayas, an almost impossible task to achieve at that point of time in history, just to bring back a stone to make a statue of the heroine of Silappadigaram, Kannagi. While it throws chronology to the wind, Silappadigaram coming at least 2 centuries later, KNS gives a detailed argument to show that this Padigam should have been inserted at an even later date. Most interesting here is the history of Perumbegan, who was the chieftain of Vaiyavi Nadu that is identified in the modern Palani hills. This chieftain was a contemporary of Seran Sengutuvan. This Perumbegan's wife was named Kannagi, and after living with her happily for a few years, Behan deserted her for a lover who could have been a courtesan. Caught in her mesh, Pagan was not even on visiting terms with Kannagi, and the harsh treatment meted out by him to his wife came in for severe criticism by several poets, the likes of Paranar and Kapilar, who were not only moved by sympathy for the injured wife, also for the affection and regard for the reputation of their patron, Behan, who was one of the last great 7 patrons, the Kadayelu Vallalgal. In a poem in Purananuru, Paranar sings, under the Thinai Perundhinai, which is unrequited love, and under the Thurai, that is the subdivision known as Kurungali, advising a hero who fails to upkeep the moral standards of a householder to make him correct his ways. Imagine the ethical standards of the Tamil people who had a subdivision to denote this. Paranar sings, Madattakai Mamayil Panikum Endaruli, Pada Amita Keda a Nallisai, Kada a Yane Kaliman Beha, Pasitum Varom, Baramum Ilame. களங்கண்ணியன்ன கருங்கோட்டு சீரியாள் நயம் புரிந்துரையுனர் நடுங்கப் பண்ணி அறம் செய் தீமோ அருள்வெய்யோ என இகிதியாம் இறந்த பரிசில் அகுதிருளின் இனமணி நெடுந்தேர் ஏறி இன்னாது உறைவி அரும்படர் களைமே. Paranar begins the poem with a famous anecdote of Began offering his cloak to a peacock which was shivering in the chills of the Podiyal hills, and he implies, O king, if you could be so generous and sympathetic towards the cause of a peacock, should you not be so towards your wife? And he sings, I do not come here seeking alms of you. I come here to admonish you, to ask you to immediately get on your beautifully decked chariot and go back to your wife and put an end to her misery. Whether the erring king was brought back to his senses by this honorable intercession, we do not know. But unlike the later Kannagi, the heroine of Silappadigaram, who was definitely a fictional character, this Kannagi, the wife of Perumbegan, was an actual historical figure who suffered public humiliation at the hands of her imperious husband. Could she have inspired the character of Silappadigaram? Questions K'ness, where even the names are similar. Kovalan takes a variant Kovallan, meaning a strong king, opines K'ness, and again the similarity of the name Senkutuvan found in the epic could have been the reason why this later insertion was made in the Padigam. Perumbegan was a contemporary of another chieftain, Perinalli, who ruled over a territory called Kandiram, which should have probably been situated in the Sattimangalam Pass leading from the Mysore plateau into Coimbatore, writes Avai Duraisamy Pillai, and whose munificence was sung by the poetess Kakai Padiniyar Nachellayar. So the 5th generation Chera kings Kuttuvan Irumporai, Kalangai Kanni Narmudi Cheral and Kadal Pirakottiya Sengutuvan ruled between 50 and 75 common era, and the personages of this generation are held together by the poets Paranar, Perungundur Kilar, Arisil Kilar and Kapilar, while Nachellayar and Perungundur Kilar also act as link poets, having sung the next generation, about which we will see in the coming episodes. Vanakkam.